From the original Pokémon Red and Blue in 1996 to 2017's Pokémon Ultra Sun and Moon, there have been a total of 7 generations and over 800 Pokémon introduced to the series. With the possibility of a new 8th generation on the horizon, I wanted to discuss the biggest changes that I most want to be implemented into the newest Pokémon games. Now, we already know that the first Pokémon title for the Nintendo Switch is slated to release in 2018, but we don't have any other confirmed facts about the game. All of the information we have so far is based entirely off of leaks and rumors, and a new leak points to the Switch game possibly being a return to the Kanto region. But we also had some rumors in the past that suggested the game would take place in an all-new region. Most of my points can be applied to either situation, but for the purposes of this video, I'll be assuming that we're looking at a brand new region and generation of Pokémon. So here are the biggest changes that we need in Pokémon Generation 8. So I'm going to be going pretty in-depth later on in this video, but the first thing that I want to quickly talk about is the return of fan-favorite features from the older Pokémon titles. The most requested of these is the ability for your partner Pokémon to follow you around. This was a cool feature in Pokémon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and I can totally see this returning for a new game. It's a small detail that goes a long way, as it helps players establish a bond with their Pokémon. We already have walking animations for every Pokémon thanks to the Sun and Moon Pokédex, so they would just need to implement the models into the overworld, and then we might actually get to see this feature return. Speaking of animations, I want to quickly note that although we do have 3D models of every single Pokémon, when you do see them in battle, they don't really do much other than just stand there. So I'd also like to see Game Freak improve the animations of the models and make them livelier, something similar to the animated sprites from Black and White. Another feature that is no doubt going to return in Gen 8 is player customization. We were first given this option in X and Y, and then again in Sun and Moon, with the games letting us choose from a couple of different skin and eye colors as well as a decent selection of clothing. It would be nice if Game Freak would continue to expand this system and give us even more freedom in customizing our players. This could be done by simply increasing the number of clothing and hair options, but they could also add a brand new feature. They could do this by introducing unlockable costumes that reference important characters and villains from the series. A couple of examples would be a Team Rocket costume, or even Ethan and Lyra's costumes, depending on the player's gender. We actually do have a Team Skull costume in Sun and Moon already, which can be unlocked after beating the Elite Four and then talking to the Team Skull Grunts in the Po Town Pokémon Center. Doing something like this and locking the costumes behind specific tasks like completing the Hoenn Pokédex or completing certain quests would give players a reward to chase after as they explore the Pokémon world. And finally, we have the return of some mini-games from the series. By mini-games, I mean the secret bases, the underground, the Pokéathlon, or the Pokémon Safari. Now, I don't necessarily want Game Freak to include all of these features in the game, but revamping something like the secret bases or the Pokémon Safari could make for a cool and unique attraction in Generation 8. Personally, I spent a lot of time earning all of the medals in the Pokéathlon in Soul Silver in order to get that extra star on my trainer card. And while we're on the topic, I'd also love to see the trainer card return and work similarly to how it did in Generations 3 and 4, with certain accomplishments adding a new star and changing the color of your trainer card. Generation 7's trainer passport and the unlockable stamps were fine, but I honestly just prefer the older system. Okay, so now let's start talking about some new features. Let's start with the most important thing that we want to see in Generation 8. New Pokémon, right? Generations 6 and 7 each introduced less than 100 Pokémon to the series, so I hope that Generation 8 would give us a much bigger regional Pokédex this time around. I would like to see at least 100 new Pokémon introduced, as well as a few changes to older Pokémon. Roserade, Electivire, Munchlax, and many others were all introduced in Gen 4 as evolutions and pre-evolutions to older Pokémon. We haven't seen these kinds of changes happen since Gen 4, but I would love to see some older Pokémon such as Miltank and Tauros get the same treatment in Generation 8. Sun and Moon decided to focus on the new Z-Move gimmick instead of expanding on the previous gimmick of Mega Evolution. Because of that, we didn't get any new Megas in Generation 7, so in Gen 8 I want to see the return of Mega Evolution, and the introduction of brand new Megas. I would hope to see some of the other starters get a Mega Evolution, as well as some fan favorites like Hydreigon. I wasn't a huge fan of Mega Evolution at the beginning, and I still think it's kind of annoying when a Pokemon like Sableye and Absol got Mega Evolutions instead of regular ones, but I do like to see Stage 2 Pokemon like Ampharos and Gengar get some cool new forms. People have been talking about the possibility of a new Eeveelution being introduced in Generation 8, and I do think that the 21st Pokemon movie featuring Eevee as a main character does lend some evidence to the idea. There are still a lot of types that Eevee has yet to evolve into, but the most interesting ones to me are Poison, Dragon, and Ghost. It would be really cool to see one of these appear in Generation 8 and possibly even in the new Pokemon movie. My pick would probably be the Dragon type, as I think it could have a really unique design, and it would contrast Sylveon's Fairy typing perfectly. This next point didn't really fit in anywhere else, so I'll just throw it in here. In Generation 8, I want to see some brand new Pokeballs. We haven't had very many Pokeballs introduced to the series since Generation 2, apart from the Beast Balls in Generation 7. Kurt's Apricorn Balls in Generation 2 were definitely some of the coolest looking Pokeballs in the series, and I would love to see these return in Gen 8, as well as some brand new designs. This is probably the biggest stretch on the list, but I would absolutely love it if Game Freak took cues from the success of Breath of the Wild and decided to turn the next Pokemon game into more of an open world. Just like other JRPGs, an open world Pokemon game would incorporate a quest system that would allow players to explore different storylines and adventures apart from the main plot. Quests could include simple requests to see a certain Pokemon, maybe increasing in difficulty from a Magikarp to a Bulbasaur, and even up to a Mewtwo or a Groudon. Maybe the Pokemon Daycare could give you quests that require you to breed a Pokemon with a specific egg move, and maybe Nurse Joy could send you off on a quest to rescue an injured Pokemon. There really is an endless amount of possibilities, and completing these quests would help players connect and engage with the Pokemon world. I'm also going to throw in the idea of no HMs. Game Freak already did away with HMs in Sun and Moon, but even then, the ride Pokemon that took their place still stood as obstacles for progression. If we were given an open world to explore and multiple quests to complete, then we would have absolutely no need for these artificial roadblocks. Another change that an open world could bring is the opportunity to choose your own adventure. We've been given the option to participate in Pokemon contests and Pokemon showcases in previous games, but they both lacked any depth in terms of story and character development. It would be interesting to see a different storyline, or at least an optional quest that allows you to participate in these kinds of events and feel as though they are an important part of your overall journey. Additional cutscenes or unlockable costumes could also help give players a reason to explore something other than the Pokemon League. And finally, we have Pokemon Gyms. The main roadblocks in any Pokemon game is the gyms. You usually can't progress past the current city or town until you've beaten its gym leader and reached a certain point in the story. In an open world Pokemon game, we would be able to choose which gyms to tackle and in which order, similar to the way that Mega Man games let you choose your preferred order of Robot Masters. We know from watching the anime that gym leaders use Pokemon that match the strength of their challengers, so each gym leader could use a different team depending on how many badges the player has before facing them. Let's take Brock for example. If you were to challenge him with 0 badges, then he would use his Geodude and Onix like in Red and Blue. On the other hand, if you were to challenge him with about 6 badges, he might use his team from Gold and Silver, which are at a much higher level. This system would allow for players to choose the order in which they want to challenge the gyms while still making the battles fair. Endgame content is almost essential for any RPG because it leaves players with more to do after completing the main objective. We've seen a bit of a focus on post-game story in the last few Pokemon games with the Delta episode in Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby, as well as episode Rainbow Rocket in Ultra Sun and Moon. Including multiple episodes in the Generation 8 games would expand the scope of the story and even introduce entirely new characters and storylines. Instead of trying to cram everything into the main plot, it would make a lot more sense and be a lot more interesting to develop the lore behind certain legendary Pokemon and catch each one through a series of episodes. Upon completing the main game, there should be plenty of additional game modes to explore as well. We already talked about the return of Pokemon contests or something similar to them, but I would be even more excited to see the return of the Battle Frontier. After completing the Pokémon League and being named the region's champion, many players would then strive to conquer the Battle Frontier and defeat all of the Frontier Brains in order to truly complete their Pokémon journeys. Oh, and let's not forget about the title defense battles that were introduced in Sun and Moon. Including this as well would make the post-game even more robust. Online battles are some of the most important aspects of the Pokémon series, and I feel as though Generation 8 can make some positive changes to the system. First off, I think that the Festival Plaza should be thrown out altogether in favor of something more so like the PSS system from X and Y. With this system, it was quick and easy to find and interact with your friends, unlike the Festival Plaza. And since we're on the topic of multiplayer, let's talk about the possibility of local battles similar to Pokémon Stadium and Pokémon Battle Revolution. Since this game will be on the Nintendo Switch, we would be able to use 2 Joy-Cons to control 2 different trainers and make use of this sort of system. This might be a little bit too complicated, but maybe Game Freak could even assign unique trainer IDs to every player, and by entering in your ID you could access your saved battle teams from any Switch device. Again, this is kind of out there, but it would make for an awesome local multiplayer experience. So the final point in this video is going to be DLC. Game Freak could add expansions to the game, such as new Pokémon, new costumes, or even an entire new region to explore. As long as they don't start charging for content that would otherwise be accessible in the game, such as rare Pokémon or items, I would totally support the decision to include DLC in the game. This could turn Generation 8 into more of a platform than a single game, and Game Freak could continue to support this one game for a couple of years instead of making a brand new game every few years. Even if that's not the case, I know that Nintendo is starting to warm up to the idea of DLC, and I hope that they do include it, but to a reasonable extent. Alright, so that's it. Now that we've discussed all of these different topics, we can easily see that the game has the potential to be huge. If you're excited for Generation 8, then let's do a little experiment. Leave a comment letting me know if you'd rather have a Battle Frontier, or if you'd rather have Pokemon following you in Generation 8. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit that like button, and if you want to see more content like this, then hit the subscribe button. Oh, and I think I'm supposed to tell you to hit the bell now too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.